space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission, to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilization, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Greetings, salutations, and welcome to Retrek. I'm Captain Jim, and with me, of course, are Admiral Elliot.
Hi there.
And Dr. Squee.
Trigger!
Wow. And that's the end of the show. I don't think we can...
Yeah, I think that's
Trigger!
it. We can't stop that.
Nope, that's it. But we'll give it a go. So we are here to talk about the second episode of Season 3 of Picard, which is called Disengage, which...
If you want to go in big, I say we start with the Trek news. Sorry.
Okay, let's start with the Trek news.
Come on. I want to get some energy into this tonight. Come on.
Well, my energy levels were good.
No, you're doing grand. Sorry, I didn't mean to dish you. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm pulling Elliot up, not pulling you down.
Less of it. Right, Elliot, we have exciting, it's actually Retrek news.
It is Retrek news. It's not Trek news. It's Retrek news.
Oh, for fuck's sake, I'll change the ticker.
As a lot of our mates know, in 2 weeks, we'll be arriving.
2 weeks.
We'll be arriving at the pre-party for Sci-Fi Weekender.
Mm-hmm.
And as you all know, we normally do our show on a Wednesday night, and we're not going to be able to because of travelling and all sorts of arriving at different times. So what we've decided to do is we're going to do an unofficial start to the Weekender on the Thursday at 1:30 at the Reed Cutters. We are going to do Retrek Live for the previous week's episode of Picard.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So anybody who's at the Weekender, come join in, give your opinions, join in with us on the show.
Tell us what you think about Picard. And for anyone who's not familiar with the Sci-Fi Weekender, this show might have a little bit less of our sort of trademark professionalism, because 1:30 at the Sci-Fi Weekender, the sun is well over the yard arm, as they say. So it's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, and like it was a very packed schedule for the Sci-Fi Weekender, so they can fit us in. So we're doing it anyway. We're going rogue. We're like Star Trek Insurrection right here.
We'll be better than Star Trek Insurrection.
Yeah, and also considering I'm hosting some of the panels, I'll then be a good boy after that.
Yeah. We'll cut that bit.
Yeah.
Where you inadvertently diss them.
Yeah, we'll insurrect, and then we will get very orderly after that.
Yeah. Well, insurrection first, then conformity.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. So from insurrection to disengage then. So all this week, I've been sat there and I've been going, oh, that's so clever what they've done. They've taken like the Borg's catchphrase, but they've put dis before it. And then I'm like, wait a minute, the Borg don't say engage, they say assimilate. So what have I been thinking? No.
It sometimes says is engage. So
yeah, Picard says engage.
We found out.
Yeah, I was thinking it was to do with Borg. I don't know. I just had like a brain fart. Anyway,
it did seem a little shoehorned in the episode when it's used. That it doesn't really like. You would never use that phrasing. It's only because they wanted to get engaged in it and disengage. And to be honest with you, I think they might have nicked this from the Star Trek Next Conversation. They always end their episodes with disengage.
Do they now? Maybe it's like a little tip of the hat to it, you know.
Oh, and they feature one of my voice notes this week in their mail bag they've got at the beginning.
So you've been sucking up to other Star Trek podcasts.
Yeah. Like fully functional data, I've been sucking up to them. Yeah.
Right. Well, we'll talk about that off the air.
I'm nothing if not a podcast whore.
That's true, aren't we all? So Disengage then obviously picks up. Well, it doesn't. I was going to say it picks up exactly where we left it, but it doesn't. We get this 2 weeks earlier flashback, which I don't think is entirely necessary, if we're being perfectly honest. And it's just to give us a bit of a flavour of Jack Crusher. And he's smuggling booze, he's smuggling guns, he's smuggling medicine.
Well, the booze and the guns are more bribes, aren't they, to be able to smuggle the medicine to where it's needed?
Maybe, but I think wasn't he going to sell the weapons to people as well?
No, he bribed the Fenwick Rangers with the weapons.
I know he did.
Medical supplies.
I mean, I definitely think the medical supplies thing is true, but I think there's also a side of him which is roguish and enjoys those elements probably more than his mum would like, the way I put it. I don't think it's like, if it wasn't for the medical supplies, he wouldn't just be smuggling for the sake of smuggling, but I think he can get the kick out of it. I think we're meant to believe he enjoys it.
Yeah, you don't have that many guns and cases of Romulan ale just for...
I mean, slightly to your point, Jim, though, I mean, they do have a scene later where they basically go through the fact that he's a con man and explain this perfectly fine. We didn't need this scene at the beginning, really, like you're saying.
Yeah, so, I just felt... Yeah, it's one of these things that I do think flashbacks have a purpose and, can often be really useful. But I don't feel it's necessary in this particular instance. I'd have been happy to jump straight back in, but anyway, it's a minor.
I think it was also
I should simplify something which I wanted to say up top because I really enjoyed this episode. So I wanted to get the kind of gripe out of the way at the beginning. And it was kind of that we spend the whole episode just on one thing in the nebula and like one, basically like when some episodes of Star Trek, this would be one scene. And that did feel like, if you'd tighten up a few moments, you could have maybe had another scene at the beginning, another scene at the end, and just kind of flesh it out a bit. That was my only kind of slight complaint, and one which we'll get to when we get there.
There is a little bit though where it's sort of setting something up, like you have the guy and he goes, what's the name? I've written it down.
I missed the name that he said.
It's the villain, isn't it? But I keep saying the name wrong, so I have written it down. Vanek, yeah.
Vanek. It doesn't, but the Fenwick Ranger doesn't say tell.
Is that not what it says?
No. But I know. But
no, it says the scar-faced woman or the damaged woman.
No, it says tell so-and-so that I found him.
But she doesn't use he does. I'm sorry, I thought you were saying he doesn't use a name. He uses like this, the scarred woman, or there's a term for her that he uses.
Right. And we talked a lot last week, and I'm sure we'll touch on it this week. Jack Crusher's accent. And in this opening bit, I feel like they're ladling it on a bit too, because he goes, Mon ami.
Yes.
It's like, all right. So he knows French words, does he?
Oh god, yeah, that really made me cringe because it was like, right, okay, it's Picard time. Okay, we get it. It's fine. You don't have to lay loads of clues to something which is inevitable. You don't have to have this. And it's like stuff which makes no sense that he'd speak with a British accent and he's French.
I mean, I think to an extent the fact that he is a con man kind of adds a bit more credence to this. Like maybe he's developed this as a persona. And, he's chosen to take on this accent.
Why?
Because British, we sound, if you sound English, you sound a little bit way, a little bit were.
I mean, I understand that obviously, when I said
Cockney, innit?
He's British and somehow French, I didn't mean as in the accent, by the way, for anyone who's I know that in the Star Trek world, in this time, like I think they've they've mentioned it with Picard that basically the French speak with an English accent. We've established that. Anyway.
Yes.
It's just the fact that he had all these things from Picard for no like an accent is biologically transferred.
Well, it is, that's a fact. But
and the odd French phrase.
Yeah, that all them things are passed down.
Yeah.
I mean,
like the phrasing you can even get away with a little bit by saying that Beverly used to use it. She picked it up from Jean-Luc when they were together. Great, that kind of works, but the accent, there is no way you could justify that.
I think it's a manufactured persona that he's put on, maybe because he knows who his absentee father is and he wants to create an artificial closeness to him by mimicking his accent.
I mean, even I like a bit of headcanon. That one hurt my brain.
I'm going to write a book about it. It's going to be called Jack Crusher's Accent.
Yeah.
Right.
Accents
So
of My Father, the Jack Crusher story.
yeah, exactly. And right, this lad who plays Jack Crusher, I'll tell you who he reminds me of. It reminds me of the bloke who's in Torchwood. What's his name?
Gorman.
Burn Gorman or whatever
Gorman.
it is. Yeah, I do want to say that the Jack Crusher lad is a lot better looking than Torchwood boy.
Actually,
but there's something about him that I'm just like, oh, it reminds me of him, but just less smarmy.
I've got it. He is a cross because I thought I knew who he looked like. Now, if you put yours and mine together, I think you get him because I was thinking of Taron Egerton, of course, from the.
There you go. Yeah,
you put him with Burn Gorman.
Yeah,
those two together, and you get this guy. I think those two might have somehow gene spliced and made him.
There we go, and that's why he's got the British accent. So that's two British actors.
Well, now it all makes sense.
It does.
Well, actually, as an actor, it makes sense. It still doesn't make sense for the character.
He don't, because Beverly's genetically engineered him out of the DNA of those two actors. Beverly's always been a big fan of early 21st century popular culture. And she's decided, my two favourites were Taron Egerton and Burn Gorman. And now...
I almost want there to be a shit line in there, like... oh, and of course, my mother used to play Your Locks to me every night, and that's where I picked up this accent.
Oh, that's coming, is that? That is coming. I'll guarantee you that's coming.
It's going to be so crap, but I kind of want it to, at least they put something in there for it.
Yeah, and you do get all these bits like Riker's going, something very familiar about that boy.
God, they were laying on so thick. I was almost hoping it wasn't just so it would be something to subvert my expectations.
I still don't think he's 20-year-old. It don't come across as 20-year-old. I still think we may be looking at when Beverly vanished for a season in season 2 is when it happened.
I think the reasoning gets so clouded if you do it that way, because then you've got to write why he had so many series of her not being with him.
Yeah, why we didn't see him, and
I think it's a lot cleaner if you do it after the show, because then you can say 20 years we haven't seen you.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of them where the timeline doesn't quite add up, but you've just got to roll with it. Like Egon in the new Ghostbusters film, it's like if you work all that out mathematically, like, right, so when we saw Egon in Ghostbusters 1 and 2, he was actually a deadbeat dad who just fucked off and left his kids to go study science. But that's obviously not the intent, but that's the only way it works mathematically. But
and also, I think Alexander was maybe 10 when he was in Deep Space Nine, if you follow the timeline or something.
Yes, but we know that Klingons age quickly, obviously. So Captain Shaw now, he last week, obviously we were just like, this guy's an arsehole. I really like what they do with him this week. I'm not saying he's my favourite guy ever, but they've given him so much more humanity than he had last week. It starts right at the beginning where he's like, so you want me to risk 500 people for 2? And you're like, that's a fair point, Captain Shaw.
Even everything he said in the first episode makes, there is a very big argument, even though he comes across the arsehole to us because we like our
because Picard and Riker are
there are buddies. But if you think about everything he does, it's all to protect his crew. That's actually very noble. That is a perfectly valid viewpoint, and they just softening the edges and make him a more complicated character was so much more fun this episode, because I sort of already had plotted in my head, as I was saying last week. He'll have to then get deposed by Seven, who's then going to then lead the ship to victory. But it's so much more interesting if you make him.
Yeah, and it's like that where he turns them down on the request to go to Nebula, and he's right. These two guys have come up to do a tour, an unannounced inspection. And then without any official orders, just going, disobey the orders you've been given and do this instead. It is right to say no.
I mean, the only thing which makes
Picard to do exactly the same if someone came on his ship and did that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I think also the other part of it was that the only thing which didn't make sense in it was that later on, Picard announces admiral orders on the bridge, and this guy who said no to him because he's an admiral before is suddenly like, yeah, sure, well, you're an ad. It's like I think
it's a little bit.
His mellowing justifies it a little bit, but still, I think after you've been turned down as an admiral by an order, you wouldn't then announce on the bridge as if it's going to carry weight. It's
the chain of command gets a little bit.
I think where he was trying to make him disobey his orders and go to the nebula. And he went, no, you can't do that. But he isn't saying you're not an admiral. And in this situation where Picard goes, admiral's orders, the innocent is taking command of it.
No. Last week he said he was retired, so that's why he doesn't have to follow.
He did a distant, didn't he?
And also, when they're on the bridge, his justification for why they've got to do it is because it's his son. Now, given everything that Shaw said in the first episode, what the fuck sense does that make? Like, he's going to then, it's for one person, but it's your son. Then in that case, whoa, let's risk it.
See, we'll talk about that more when we get there, but I actually liked that bit, and I thought that was...
But it just doesn't make any sense. It was fun to watch.
I think that worked for sure, but we'll dig into that when we get there. But so they're trapped on the ship because the shuttle's been destroyed. And so obviously they can't get back to the Titan, so Captain Shaw's gonna have to do something, or Seven's gonna have to. So that's what they're setting up, is that the only way they can be rescued now is the Titan. Meanwhile, Raffi's subplot then. I like bits of this. I don't like other bits of it. I'm not so keen on how disconnected it is from everything else. And
my biggest gripe is the Raffi subplot slows down the episodes,
and particularly.
And I'm I've been thinking, and I'm thinking, should we do the reveal of who else she meets in a little subplot now, or shall we leave that for the next time?
We can leave it when we get. I mean, I suppose it doesn't matter, does it?
I'm sort of like, the sooner they join up with Picard, the better.
Well, also, you've kind of got her as a satellite on her own. She is the one that, like, even 7 of 9 is a legacy character from Star Trek. Mm-hmm. She's the only non-legacy character, and I'm sorry, but she is one of the most melodramatic. Like, I've never really taken her character as much as most of the other crew. So you've got probably the least interesting of the new characters. I'm sorry, but you've got her, and then you put her on her own without anyone with her. So that, like you were saying, Elliot, it's like it feels like all the actions on the Titan where our legacy crew is. Like you've got 3 members of the original crew, and only at the end of the second episode do you get anyone joining Raffi's story who we know. Whereas you could have gotten a couple more people earlier to join her, then that would have been more exciting, you know.
And particularly the first time through this episode, because I was so invested in the main plot, every time it cut to Raffi, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And rewatching it, them scenes are not that long, but the first time watching it, I'm like, oh, come on.
And also, like, they've made her so one note with the struggles with addiction. Now, and I love the fact they tackle struggles with addiction they do in an adult way. That's fine. And I'm not saying that once someone's cured in one day, they don't have relapses. But as a character beat, I'm sorry, but we've seen it in the last.
We've seen it
constantly. That's all you're giving her, and it's just not that interesting when you've already covered that.
What I do find a bit more interesting is the fact that we know from season 1 that Raffi had this big conspiracy theory, which actually turned out to be 100% accurate. And I like the fact that when she meets her ex-partner, there's this thing of, oh, you're slipping down that rabbit hole again. It's like, no, she was fucking right the first time, so don't be having a go at her.
Yeah, I mean, that's the storyline I more would have followed with her. I would have beefed that up, maybe including her children in it a bit, like a grandson.
I don't know, but you've got to see it from his point of view. At the time, she was on a conspiracy theory.
Mm-hmm.
I know it was proved to be right, but at the time she was the only one sort of shouting all this. But she did spiral down into drug addiction through it.
She did, yeah. So
he's got that from being her ex-husband, being with her in a relationship while that happened.
Yeah.
So he's looking at it from that. Well, here we go again. I know exactly where this leads.
Yeah, I think
it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong in the end.
Yeah.
at this point in the conspiracy theory, I know exactly what happens to you.
But you know what? I would have been more invested in that storyline if the first thing you'd seen was maybe her having lunch with him and talking about the kid, and maybe the idea of him seeing her grandkid. And then you've got to have this bit where she's got to ask him for a favor, and then she goes, well, you've got a choice, either that or that, you know.
That would have been more interesting.
More blunt and more cruel. Whereas if you build that up and she's getting a relationship with him, and then she asks for a favor, then he feels like, oh, what, this was all just for the favor.
But would that have slowed the episode down even more?
No, I don't think so, because if you put it right at the beginning of the first episode is what I mean.
Yeah.
That means we're investing in the story before we get into the main plot, so that then when you're coming back to it, we've got a thread to follow. Whereas really it's just her bumbling through, following clues, finding clues. She's basically a mechanic for the rest of the episode, as opposed to having
and it's very much that, like, you're watching it going, okay, can you connect with the main plot now? Because
and if you're going to have someone on their own, put it as a legacy character, someone who we already care about a bit more. Have her as part of the Titan.
I'm quite sure what she's investigating is all off the Titan.
I'm sure it is.
It's all coming back to that.
Yeah. It's just at the moment it feels very disconnected.
Yeah, the nuts and bolts of it are not that interesting until we get to the end of it this episode. But while we're talking about her ex-husband, there's a bit where he says, oh yeah, I spoke to our son, he said you ambushed him at the medical centre. That was in season 1, that was like 3 years ago, but the way he says it is as if this has just happened, you know.
He hasn't seen his son either for 3 years.
Really weird. It's like, oh yeah, he said you ambushed him at the what? Like, fucking ages ago. And that just seems like a little bit of sloppy writing there. Like they've forgotten how much past that we are now.
But if you have it in the conversation, actually, it might be because they were filming series 3 while they were filming series 2. So maybe that kind of like they didn't think ahead.
Maybe
3 years ago. But again, if you'd had a scene with them having like connecting already at the beginning, and then he could have said, you know, you just alter the line slightly to be, it's like, look, he's still gun shy about that time you just turned up a couple of years back.
Yeah.
If you want to be in his life, you have to be in it for real. So that then when she asks for another favor about something else, he's like, well, I thought you were coming here for him. What do you actually want? And that we care.
Yeah, exactly. Acknowledge that some time has passed. If you weren't paying as close attention as we are, and I'm sure a lot of Star Trek fans are, because we do pay attention to this sort of thing, but if you were just binge watching it.
No time passes in season 2.
No, but season 2 is said to be 2 years after season 1, and this is clearly sometime after that. Okay, so
fair enough, yeah.
Because I mean, it's like it's really frustrating, because I think you could have a really interesting character in her. They just haven't pulled the taffy enough.
No,
the most interesting part about her was her being a mechanic for 7 of 9, which isn't doing that character any service. So then, by the time you bring her back in season 3. And again, it's like the reason why everyone's excited about season 3 is the Next Generation crew. So it's just mean to put her on her own as an undeveloped character.
Did I tell you about the premiere that they did?
What about it?
Because you know they showed the first 2 episodes as a premiere, and they invited people from Star Trek Press and all that podcasts. During the lines with Gabe, while we were watching the premiere, the volume cut out, and she stood up in the middle of the feature and went, "It's okay, I'll tell you what I said."
That's good.
Nice. Like it.
So back on the Titan then, there's some great stuff. Like I like that Seven's sort of trying to play on Shaw's sense of pride. Like, do you want to be the captain who rescued 2 legends, or do you want to be the captain who let them die?
And this was the interesting thing, because I felt it was her learning to work the system. Like when you're not in command yourself, how do you steer things?
Yeah.
And it does work for her arc of what they said in the first episode. It's like, how do I do what I need to?
Yeah, how do I play this guy?
Well, because you've got to work with him. You've got to talk to him. Like he's actually, again, he comes across gruff, but he has got some really fucking good points. You know, the bit about her making her use her human name because it's too Borgy otherwise is a bit of a but he's not really
Well,
a complete.
there's another clue about this in this episode. And I think something major has happened to him at War 359.
That would make sense.
It would make sense,
Well,
yeah.
part of the end credits is his medical file.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, nice.
And you also get parts of that mentioned in this episode.
Yeah, you get mentioned like his psychological profile and everything, yeah.
And his grudges seem to mainly be with Seven and with Picard, even though he's taken a bit out on Riker. You feel like it's just adding in source there.
Yeah. And I think that Seven does get through to me because he must think like, yeah, okay, I'll get back home and they'll go, yep, technically you followed all the orders. You shouldn't have risked 500 for 2.
You did the right
but
thing.
You've just got Jean-Luc Picard and Will Riker killed. So that's not going to go down well.
I mean, it's a really shitty situation because especially, can you imagine being the guy who let those 2 legends die just after Starfleet cadet camp has just gone under?
Yeah, and it'd be like, you know what? This is what Captain Harriman in Generations will have had to go through. Like, so you went out you were meant to just go to Mercury and you've got Jim Kirk killed. Well done.
This is what I liked about this, as it's kind of, it is a bit of a parallel to Captain, sorry, what was it? Harriman. Harriman, sorry. It is a kind of like parallel to Captain Harriman, but whereas he was kind of a bit feckless and a bit kind of like bumbling, this guy is really kind of on it, just very kind of strict and very away from the path. So it's kind of, it's similar. It gives you that parallel feeling without copying the plot line, which is nice.
Yeah, and he does get to do a really cool bit where the ship bursts out of warp and disrupts the tractor beam and everything. That looks awesome. That's a really good hero moment, is that?
Because that was my concern going into this, like the first episode. The only thing I was worried about after the first episode was how much it felt like they could be just copying plot lines from the past, which Jack Crusher still feels a little bit like, but at least they spiced up his character a bit. So I'm glad when they're foiling my expectations in that way. I don't want it to just be a copy of Trek Past.
No, and I think, there are elements, aren't there? But so I was thinking about this there are so many stories where you get the older hero discovers that he's got a child he didn't. Obviously, we've got Kirk. They did it in Indiana Jones, even though we don't talk about that one. And they're doing it here. And I wonder if it's because, from a story writing point of view, you don't want them to have a child when you're telling all these action adventure stories with them, because that inhibits the story you can tell. But when the actors and the characters are older, you think, a dynamic with a son would be interesting. So we've got to kind of retroactively insert one into the stories. We want that dynamic, but we've not done the homework for it. So we need to have this hitherto unknown child come into it.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing, you get your cake and eat it too. So you get the person to be a roguish like character who's just cares about themselves, so they don't have to worry about any family when they're going into these daring do adventures. But then you want them to be thinking about legacy at the end and like maybe how they haven't prepped one. And here is an illegitimate child they've never met. It's I just think that it would have been nice if they'd done something interesting, like make it a daughter, maybe do something differently.
Sorry, and I won't harp on endlessly about Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but just one point on it is just sloppy script writing. Like, they have the bit earlier on where Indy's looking at the pictures of Marcus and of his dad, and he goes like, I feel like I've reached that point in life where the universe stops giving and starts taking away. And then by the end of the film, he's got a wife and a daughter. But at no point do they call back to that moment and have him say, I got it wrong. The universe has given to me. And it's like, you've set that up, but you've not paid it off. And it's like, you've spent 20 years writing this script. That's just so basic. Whereas in Star Trek 2, they do that, because you start with Kirk saying, I feel old. And then he discovers he's got a son and he goes through the whole adventure. And then at the end, she says, how do you feel? And he says, I feel young. And that's what Indiana Jones's arc in that film should have been. But they ruined it.
Yeah, they even have like Sean Connery having died in a line that's like, yeah, now that Denham Elliott and my dad's dead, it's like that's all. Like
It's
he's
like,
still alive. He
shit.
still has a nice cameo there, if anything.
He better be fucking dead. You've not got enough money to get me to play him again, you bastards. And by the way, I'll have 2 million just to use that picture. Anyway, that's the last I'll say about that. I'm sure it was tangentially relevant. Yeah, so where are we up to? Yes, the Titan makes the save then. And there's a good bit where they come onto the bridge, and this is where I started to like Shaw, where he just goes, "Oh, you boys are in so much trouble." When they come onto the bridge, and you're like, "Oh, yeah, I quite like him there."
Yeah.
He's got a sense of humour, at least.
Yeah, and it's like, it's also when he's like basically rubbing their nose, it goes like, right, let's see what trouble you guys have got me into here. It's like he just keeps on throwing it back at them, which is delightful.
And the trouble is Amanda Plummer in this role of Vadik that we don't really know who she is yet, but what a performance she gives.
Oh, jeez. This is up there with a performance in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, that's right.
It sort of reminds me of a mix between her, between Nero in 2009 Star Trek, and going back to Christopher Plummer, her daddy himself. Like, you know, those two combined, you kind of get.
Yeah.
She's got the archness of Christopher Plummer, but she's got the comedic timing of Nero. Like, he had those lovely lines like, "Hey, Nero," like when it goes on the thing as opposed to a full. Hey, Captain, Nero here.
There's a bit where it's where Pike introduced himself. So I'm Christopher Pike, and he goes, "Hello, Christopher. I'm Nero."
That's it. And it's like here she's. The only thing is, like, what they got about cigar chomping kind of.
I don't know, and I want to know if that one that she lights is the same one when she comes back on, like an hour later. Is like, have they made in the future like a cig that never goes out? Like, because that'd be awesome.
Well, we see her lighting it, so it definitely needs lighting at very least.
Yeah, but she's still got one when we come back. So
she's got a new one.
Probably, yeah, realistically. And I love the way she says Picard, like she goes, Jean-Luc Picard.
Yeah,
she really.
He does the French more than he does.
In the synthetic flesh.
Yeah. So,
which, by the way, don't
she gives clues here that she knows them. Like, she's there. Oh, Liam Shaw. It's so nice that you could still function with your psychological problems.
Yeah, she seems to know everything about everybody, which is...
Yeah.
Although, you have a Captain Shaw there, okay, sorry, for anyone who doesn't know, Dr. Squee isn't my birth name. My actual name's Liam Shaw. And when, they said Liam Shaw, I go, that was so close. All you had to do is make it Ian Shaw. Like, that was just, oh, come on. You could have done me that one.
Could have done it.
Like it. I think
nearly there.
I honestly think Ian and Liam are from the same origin, if I'm remembering correctly.
I mean, they're practically the same. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Liam might be the Irish version and Ian was the Scottish version, which I've obviously cross-pollinated over the years, but if I'm remembering correctly, I think they come from the same... I think they both.
No, you're trying to say that you're Captain Shaw. We're not having it.
I'll justify that another time, but I think they both come from the name Ewan, which I think was the root word. Anyway, that's
now your cousin Liam. He can have it.
Your cousin Liam can be Liam Shaw, no problem. But we don't know anything about her really yet. But we do know that it's heavily armed, that they've been patrolling, and the Fenris Rangers are aware of them. We know they've got these weird masked people. We know that she knows everything about everyone, and we know that she wants Jack Crusher, which is enough to create the tension and the drama in this episode. And I'm sure we are going to get more of her going forward.
And then she goes, I'll drop my shield so you can scan me so they see what weapon she's got.
Yeah.
And it's literally all the best stuff Starfleet's got and stuff that they don't even understand the technology of.
Yeah. And we see that in action when she just yeets the ship at them, which is pretty cool.
That reminded me of like my favorite moment. Actually, it's up there in my favorite moments ever of Doctor Who. It was in the 50th anniversary, and you get this bit where they're first showing the War Doctor. You've got and her as the War Doctor, and they show him like this kind of sets the table for his whole characters. He takes the TARDIS, flies it kind of in the spinning motion, and it beheads a Dalek. And it's like, I mean, he's still doing fighting the bad guy, but the Doctor would never do that. And it's such a great way of showing what he's capable of. And this is what you're doing here. You've never seen a starship thrown at another starship before. Yeah. And it really sets the table for
I just like how Captain Shaw goes, what just happened? Did he get LaForge? She threw a ship at us.
Yeah, I mean,
it's that thing as well. Like they've got shields, they've got ablative armor, they've got all of this, but it is just blunt force trauma that's going to cut through it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I do want, I like you guys. I love Amanda Plummer in this. I think she's brilliant. I do want to know her stakes, though. I want to know why this is important to her. Why is she trying to kill?
It's great to have a nice action scene. Like I'm going to say at the moment, she's possibly one of my new favorite Trek villains.
You see, I remember when you said that in the group earlier in this week, and I was like, I'm with you. Once I know why, like I've got to know why for her to be a really great villain.
That's why I did the possibly.
Yeah. It's just that.
Like I love this performance she does. I just think it's brilliant. It's so evil and over the top.
It is. It's excellent.
See, this might be, I don't know, maybe it's just the way my mind works, but it's like, for me, like the performance is wonderful. As I say, I'm not taking anything away from her. But until I know why she's doing it, she's just a mechanic for the adventure as opposed to her own agency. And I need that to get invested.
I do think we get a tiny little hint of motivation later on where she says, I will honour my terms. And she almost puts just a little bit more emphasis on my. And to me, that implies the Federation has not kept their end of the bargain with her or her people or something like that.
Yeah, something's happened.
And it's just, so this is what happens when you get great actors, because it's just a tiny, tiny little bit of emphasis. And I only picked up on it the second time through, and I was like, okay, that's something to keep an eye on.
And there is that delicious scene where she explains the meaning of the name of the ship. It's like, I forget the name of the bird, but it's like, it's an earth bird.
Shrek.
And it just... And it just takes a little bit at a time, just like I'm going to do. I'm going to take a little bit of everything that makes you you until I destroy you. And it's just, that's a wonderful villain speech.
They're all on it with these over-the-top exploits. Like when Picard turns up to talk to Jack and he goes, well, I've always been fond of... And Jack sort of calls him out on it because he's like, oh, that's an interesting opening to an interrogation.
I think it's somewhere around here. I think it's a good, like, close enough place for me to bring it up. There is one of my favorite shit bits of dialogue in this episode, and it's delivered by Riker. And I don't know if you guys picked up on this, but it's this one line he delivers, and it makes no fucking sense whatsoever. He goes, if there's one place in the universe I don't want to be, it's on the back foot. Like the back foot is a location. It's like saying, if there's one place in the universe I don't want to be, it's toast. It's like, it makes no sense. There's no fucking sense to that. The back foot isn't location. It's a position to be in.
Yeah, but that's what he was doing. He was kind of mixing his metaphors.
It's awful. It just makes no sense. It's like, it sounds like a really cool tough guy line, but it just, like, again, it seems like one of those things where they're going, oh, no, we want to have a tough line in there. I'll just put, like, back foot for now. We'll replace it with something better.
Yeah. They should have like an aside later where Picard goes, that wasn't your best work, Will. It's kind of like, because I watched The Apprentice, and every single week Alan Sugar says these things, sorry, Lord Sugar says these things, and it's meant to be these like scathing put downs that he does. And he has these little sycophantic helpers who are there going, ha ha ha, Lord Sugar, brilliant. But it's absolute crap. Like they'll have something where they were meant to sell sausages, and he'll go, well, I sent you out to bring me some bangers and you've brought me some scratchings. Oh, sugar. Yeah, it's just utter rubbish that he says.
It reminds me of the first series where Riker said...
yeah, but they're on several $100,000 a year for clapping and laughing at
It's very true. I'd happily clap and laugh at.
Yeah.
It just makes me think of the first series line where Riker goes like, for all the fun while I'm back on the planet cooking pizza. No one made you cook the pizza. No one was forcing you to do it. You chose to retire.
I'd have made you cook the pizza. You only won between like 7 people, dickhead. Anyway.
Pizza between 7 people. And it took him all fucking day.
It did.
10 minutes to cook a fucking pizza tops.
Absolutely does. I'll tell you what, Cavani's down the road from me. I bet you, if I put an order in, it'd be here before I'd finish this podcast. I'm not going to do it because I don't want a cold pizza when I go downstairs. That's how good they are.
Yeah.
Cavani's, if you want to sponsor us. Anyway, Captain Shaw has a really good line, though.
You buy water.
Where he says, so we're essentially cornered in space, which has no corners.
I mean, even that's a bit better than
I think that's a great line. I think that's really deadpan.
Because it says it, we're cornered in space, and then he realises, it's got no corners.
No, I should say.
Because he realises what he said, which I think is quite clever.
Yeah.
No, I think you're both right. I think that's a really good one. I like it. It's comedic. It makes sense, which is a good start. It's like that's what the Riker line should have been. Like, it should have been something as good as that.
Yeah, it's just something better than what he did say. But yeah, there is some. Again, we get Riker, why are you dancing around it, Jean-Luc? It's like we all get it, and I think Riker, as Picard's mate at this point, should go, okay, clearly he knows, but he don't want to talk about it. I'm going to shut up about it and let him deal with it in his own time, sort of thing.
But that's not Riker's character. Riker does things like that. Riker is quite annoying to his mates.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bull buster, but it's like, I mean, even the first episode I thought was just a bit mean to basically take the piss out of LaForge Jr. on the bridge of the ship. Like
I said, I just saw that as an uncle.
Oh, I do. I know. I get that. But
that's how it was done.
The level to which he does it, I think he's not mean though. You know, it's like right in front of everyone. That's pretty.
Maybe when Deanna turns up. Yeah. Like, this is going to be why there was that hint that there's been problem. Maybe Deanna's going to be like, yeah, well, you know how Will used to be quite outspoken and, you know, he was all right with a put down. Well, he's just took it too far. Like, he won't shut the fuck up. He keeps saying stuff that he shouldn't be saying to people. He talks bollocks about not wanting to be on the lower end. You know, I've had enough. Anyway,
if there's one thing you don't want on a pizza, it's a shuttle bay. He said that the other night. What the fuck does that mean?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I do want on a pizza, Riker. Well, I want 2 pizzas. That's what I'm getting at, Riker. Now, hurry up.
I want a pizza each.
Yeah, pizza each, exactly.
When you take an all day over it, I want a pizza each.
Or I want it to be like bloody size of an house if he's going to be. Yeah. Anyway, check out our... episode on Nepenthe to hear more of our thoughts on Riker's pizzas.
Quite a lot of his cooking. We've had quite a lot of.
We have that silly one with scrambled egg, but we won't get onto that.
Wasn't scrambled egg.
We've got to have Riker's cooking.
Well, no, it was scrambled egg, but he said it was omelette. It was not omelette. Then Raffi. So she goes to see this Ferengi who's got very small lobes, which. I just like that that's a little detail for the fans because we look at it and go, oh, the Ferengi won't be happy with him because he's got small lobes.
He's not got the lobes.
But it was really nice to have a kind of rugged Ferengi. Like, it goes back to the kind of promise of the original Ferengis with the Marauder kind of style, which I always wish they'd bring back, especially when they're the Marauder Mo action figure in Quark.
Yeah, he did.
In that episode, I was thinking, it's like, why don't they bring them back? Because, like, great, we've got the comedic branch of them, but their military can be a bit more like, you know, they use war to make profit.
This is a Ferengi who's not acclimatized to the Federation. This is a Ferengi who's having to live on the outskirts and still do dodgy stuff, whereas you get your ones like Quark who are like, no, I can work within this system and make a profit.
With this one, if you look at
I
him,
want to go to him having
stubble.
the little lobes, because he does say to Raffi that he's had the wool pulled over his eyes. He's been conned quite a few times. That's because he's got little lobes. It's not a good
It is.
Also, like, he's got stubble, this guy. Now, does that mean we could get a Ferengi with a beard? Because we haven't had that. We've never had them stubble before, which I'd like as the kind of like it suited his character. They kind of create that kind of nice little gangster look to him. Which I like.
No, it's a Ferengi with a beard is no Ferengi at all. Rule of acquisition 231.
Yeah.
There you go. Now, this with Raffi here, it's just a trope that I really don't like because, again, it makes no sense. Like, you get this thing where Raffi's going there and he goes, oh, I smell Starfleet about you. Prove to me that you're not Starfleet by doing drugs. And it's like, that doesn't prove she's not Starfleet. And you get this in loads of like gangster films. Any film where you've got an undercover cop infiltrating the mafia or whatever, they'll always go, well, prove to me you're not a cop. Do this line of coke. And it's like, that doesn't prove... It doesn't make you a cop if you don't want to do drugs. Like, you could just go, look, no, I promise, I am a scummer, but I'm just not a drug addict.
No, but her whole cover was that she was a drug addict. So here...
Okay. Yeah,
also,
that does make sense.
I'll also throw into this, because, I mean, let's face it, though, because it doesn't prove anything, because A, he doesn't believe her after she takes the drugs. B, she has a huge pause before she takes drugs, which is like, just don't do them then. If you're going to have a pause that long, you're making it so obvious that you're Starfleet.
Mm-hmm.
And 3, what was my third point on that? Because it was a really... And also, yeah, so all that proves is that she's Starfleet and she doesn't want to get killed the second that she doesn't take the drugs. Because if she doesn't
he doesn't just say that she's Starfleet, he says that she's Section 31.
Well, that's the thing. And yeah, that's the other thing. Section 31 always seems so nebulous. Like in some shows or some episodes, it seemed like no one's ever heard, like when they're first introduced in Deep Space Nine.
In DS9,
they're so secret, which is around this timeline. And now suddenly, like every Ferengi on any planet knows who they are.
I think that's because Cisco blew the whistle on it.
Yeah.
I don't know, but like they're such a secret organization. They managed to keep in the shadows from Enterprise through to DS9 times, according to the backfilled Enterprise of it all. But then suddenly, one crew manages to completely expose them across the universe.
I think that scans. I think Cisco will have.
Yeah.
And when they had, like, the Dominion War, presumably they had, like, trials of the ship female changeling and debriefs and everything. So I think it will have become public knowledge because I think they'll have had... They will have had to have said Section 31 manufactured this disease that killed the founders.
Okay, but I'm saying you could have done it through Cisco because he was off with the... whoever
it's maybe
was
not
left.
Become massive public knowledge, but he's probably become more knowledgeable. And Quark was on DS9, so he's probably sold the information.
That's it. The Ferengi will have sold it. Yeah.
It just seems convenient. Like when the plot calls for it, people know about it.
It does, yeah. But anyway, the ruse doesn't work because he's already killed Toluca, and this is where Worf makes the save, and this is awesome. He's got a new batleth. Dead.
With the Batleth previously, just this fighting style, because in the Batleth previously, he's all been about the action swings and straight forward. Now it's gliding and it's circular movements.
This was more a sword.
Yeah, he's using it.
But I think they've thought about which fighting style they've used here, because it really does. I think this is setting up very nicely so that it tracks that he isn't using an aggressive fighting style. It's more a functional fighting style.
And I think part of it as well is like when they brought the Mek'leth in for Worf, that was at Michael Dorn's request because the Batleth prop was very cumbersome. Whereas it looks like what they've done here is gone, you know what, the Batleth looks cooler, but we'll make you a lighter, sleeker one that's easier to... And you're getting on a bit, Michael, so the stuntman's probably going to be doing most of it.
I do want to point out, like, we have our chat that we have between the three of us. And these two were chatting away after watching this episode, and they're going, "Oh, Worf's mellowed quite a lot, haven't they?" And they had to point out, "What are you talking about? He's going around chopping people's heads off."
Yeah, but if you look at the fight style, that's mellowed compared to like previously. He would have been right in there with a battler through the throat or something. It's like if
Yes.
they had allowed it, but
I'm going to say that's it. It was TV PG rated at the time. We wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah. For Worf, this is mellowed like hell. he killed them with grace as opposed to with just brute force.
But what I do want to say, as soon as you see Worf, the messages Rapid was getting from a handler makes sense because it all sounded weird when you were hearing that sort of computer female voice.
Yeah, because it was all.
But then when you play it back in your head in Worf's voice, it just makes so much sense.
Well,
do not seek blame. Do not seek anger. You are a warrior.
Yeah, exactly.
But it tracks with Worf as I think we're going to find him as opposed to Worf as we know him. So, because the line's like, do not seek blame, do not seek anger, that points towards his pacifism, which we've heard about already in the trailer.
Well, no. What all we've seen is a line from Worf saying to Riker, "Well, I'm a pacifist now," and I think
true.
I think that's a wind-up based on this first introduction of Worf, where a pacifist. So the first thing you do is you stick a knife straight through someone's chest, and then you chop 3 heads off.
No. He said, "I prefer the way of pacifism." So his first advice to Rafi was to not engage, not do this, that, and the other. And only when he had to save a life did he actually use violence. I think he prefers it, but he's not going to exclusively go against it. And I think it's also building up to the same thing as they did in the 18 movie. It's going to build up to the same thing. Elliot, let me finish. It's going to build up to the same thing as you saw in the 18 movie of the thing of like, oh no, I prefer not to kill people anymore. And then so it's in the last scene you can have him killing people. I hope not. I actually hope they do again, like they've done with a few other things. I hope they go a bit left field, like not what we're expecting quite. So I'd love it if he stayed a pacifist, but he kills when he's got to. Like
you think it's a bit like when you're on a diet, and if you break your diet a bit, you're like, in for a penny, in for a pound. I'm having that pizza. It's a bit like that with Worf. It's like, well, if I've got to kill someone, I'm going to massacre everyone in this room.
I mean, maybe. I was more thinking like Karate Kid, where he's got to use it for self-defense unless he's put in a position where he's got to go on the attack.
I honestly just think it was winding Riker up with that little scene that we've seen.
Yeah,
that's where it's all coming from.
I don't think so. I think the change in the fighting style, because if you watch that is definitely different for Worf as a way of fighting.
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
Back over on the Titan then. So Jack is actually trying to hand himself in, though he does escape because Starfleet regulations say that you have to tell me the strength of the force field. All right.
Something to do with him harming himself or something.
Anyway,
I'm not convinced by that as a Starfleet regulation. I think we just had a stupid security guard.
Maybe.
No, I think they're trying to justify as like a safety measure, but we all know all of Starfleet's force fields are non-lethal, so it doesn't matter.
Well,
exactly.
I think it was sort of like a justification how he could get the shield setting to use this little gizmo.
Oh yeah, well,
I think so. Yeah.
Mechanic of it. Yeah.
And then we get this lovely scene where Riker brings Beverly up to the bridge, and just the wordless exchange between Picard and Beverly, it's just absolutely fantastic and so well acted by both of them. It's just that a whole conversation plays out there without a word said. It's great.
My favourite moment is just before he gets into Badass Admiral Picard mode. He just drops his head like, oh, fuck. Oh, the alimony for a start. Oh, okay, right, let's get this down. And then he bursts into action.
Before that, there's a lovely scene with when Jack does escape, and you have Seven runs out, and she goes, I'm not sure if I've got rank or not at the moment, but we need to do this. You go there, you do this, you do that. And she's just giving orders anyway.
Mm.
Yeah.
She's doing her second in command job. And
Yeah.
then, I don't know if you noticed in the transporter room, it's the same guy again who was at the transporter controls who dropped the fat little ship into the glass in the bar. Who was listening?
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's the same one who was at the other side who looked a bit dodgy when the board is Titan.
Right.
Ooh, what if he's...
So this
like
is making me think, is he actually something to do?
Yeah, maybe Jack isn't all that he seems.
Well, no, I'm thinking this transporter guy maybe isn't what we think, that because I think from the clip, when you've seen him previously, you're thinking, you've sort of put him together and then you see the Shrek and all that, the newer conspiracies, and you think, oh, he's part of that. I don't think he's part of that anymore.
No.
I think he's maybe, I've got a feeling, and this is a wild one, that he's actually a watcher, and Wesley sent him to watch out for his brother.
Oh, I was going to go with maybe Section 31. Like maybe he's the, like maybe that's how you bring Worf and Raffi into it, because he's their informant on the.
See, I was wondering
okay,
if
I just put out my wild theory.
No, I like that. And I was wondering though, if this transporter chief is a bad guy, as we were led to think in the first episode, and Jack's gone to him, maybe they're in it together, and Jack's actually working with Vadik, which I don't. If I'm honest, I don't see it going that way. But it's interesting where they've placed this character of the transporter chief.
Why I don't think he's a baddie in with Vadik is that if he was, Jack wouldn't be holding a gun to him to make him him transport him. He'd have transported him straight away.
Very true, yeah. Ooh, this is interesting. Yeah, good spot, Elliot. Then this is the bit where Picard says he's my son, and I do actually like this from Shaw, because I think what's going through Shaw's head, and he says, "Oh God damn it!" And I think what he's doing is, up until this point, he's thought, we can get out of this, we can give him the kid, he can get away. But I think he's thought, there is no way Picard's going to let his son die. He'll fight me. I might even have a mutiny on my hands if I try and do it. So I think he's just thought, right, well, fuck it.
I think
this is what we've got to do now.
I think he's also had the staff. I'd like to think he's had the Starfleet thing in his head, that he's thinking, I've got to give this guy over, because Starfleet rules say, because we're outside Federation space, what we've got to do. But that's not right. And Picard saying, he's my son, is giving him the justification now to do the right thing.
Well, I will throw in this. Like, the only thing, maybe, again, we could have done what you were saying, Jim, maybe jettison that, like the first scene, which is 2 days previous, which we don't really need. Then you make a little bit of time here, and you just have a little moment. You just have a moment where he goes like, I could point out that you're a tired admiral, and he goes, please, and then like, please, it's my son, and then he does the good guy turn. Like, again, it's like I've said before, you just need like a little line sometimes to explain things away.
Yeah, no, I get it, but for me, it completely worked. I got
it worked.
Yeah,
I don't. I mean, it works in the scene, but it doesn't work given that he's already said the fact that you're admiral doesn't mean shit. And then suddenly he's just going with it. I'm sorry, that doesn't...
I don't think it's necessarily to do with the rank. I think it's more to do with the force of Picard's personality and the fact that he knows people are loyal to him. And I think he's just thought...
You've proved already, though, that this guy, Shaw, isn't given to cult of personality. Like, he has different motivators. So
but I think he knows everyone else is.
Yeah, but I feel like Picard giving him that bit of respect of like deferring to him, just going, it's like, please, it's my, him asking him.
Yeah, I know that.
Then Shaw giving it to him, I think for me adds a bit more like somehow it works.
I'm not. I'm not saying it wouldn't do. I'm saying it just did work for me as is.
Yeah, this whole scene works for me as well.
Yeah, again, as I say, the scene definitely works. It's just maybe then you make a different choice earlier on about. To me, the two don't work together, but I liked it stuff.
And that's pretty much it.
I was about to say, I think it's been a nice little redemption arc.
Yeah, I just again, it's like I feel like my whole beef with Picard from the beginning is they sometimes just do stuff without justifying it, and this is a smaller example. I think there's so many less of those as the series have gone on. Like the second series had a quarter of the unexplained things than the first series did, but some people have pointed out there's some things which don't make that much sense throughout it. And the third series even less still, but this is one for me that it just doesn't quite square the circle. No,
which is fair enough. And yeah, this is pretty much where we end the episode. They make a run for it, and it finishes with that great. You've got Vadik laughing as the screen goes black, which is
follow them.
Yeah. She's enjoying. I do love the fact that she just enjoyed the fuck out of it. Like you feel like she's got personal stakes, but she just enjoys the chase.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, Picard is good at cliffhangers. It finishes with, I wish I could watch the next episode right now.
Yeah. It's nice.
Well, next episode right now, because Wharf of Khan was released in 1982. So you can go watch the next episode of Picard now if you want. Because I think that's what we might be about to get.
Oh, do you think?
Like a Wharf of Khan-esque scene.
Yeah, I think we're going to get a lot of submarine warfare again of X, Y, Z axes and hiding in.
Yeah, we're going into a nebula, aren't we? So
no sensors, everyone's shields are down.
Well, we'll find out next week. But yeah, in the meantime, if you want to get in touch with us, we're at RetrekPod on Twitter, retrekpod@gmail.com if you want to email us. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook. Elliot's got Retrek Model Studios on there.
Yeah, you can watch me building this beauty if you want on YouTube.
Oh, I've got to say, I like I said to you before, it's not really a show I ever watched, but that is a beautiful little ship.
And that's, for those listening on the podcast, Elliot, what is that ship?
That's the flying sub from Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
There we go.
The Mobius model in 1/32 scale. So it's quite a big model.
It is a big model, yeah. And Dr. Squee, what have we got on the Dr. Squee show?
Well, Dr. Squee Show, which you can enjoy every Tuesday, 6 till 8 on sw20.co.uk, or follow us on youtube.com/Dr. Squee. So yesterday I actually ended up with a bit of a migraine, so the show was off. But what I've done instead, because one of my... Sorry about this, camera's playing up. But one of the guests which I've got coming up in the next month are all in one way or another connected to mental health. So we talked to a couple of people about neurodiversity. There's a conversation which I had with one of my fellow presenters, which is more about like how our mental processes work with what we do. And then they've got another one coming up with someone who talk about mental health, who's a TV presenter. Anyway, so it's going to be Mental Health March for the Dr. Squee Show. So please check in with that.
Excellent. And thanks for trekking with us this time. We will see you next time on the Retrek.
Thank you. Goodbye.
LLAP. And if there's one place I don't want to be, it's Dragoff!
Fascinating.